Want to get creeped out? This is a story about the midnight game. Leanne and Hazel were not only roommates, but very good friends. Leanne loved horror movies and scary podcasts and crime podcasts. It was through these podcasts that she heard about paranormal games and rituals. Hazel was more of a skeptic, but also more of a wimp. She would be the one covering her eyes during horror movies that Leanne was forcing her to watch, and would never seek out horror on her own. Leanne really wanted to try the midnight game, so asked Hazel if she would be down to try it.
You want me to walk around from midnight until 3:33 a.m.?
Please, we'll have snacks and chat. It'll be spooky, but in a fun way. I'm sure nothing will even happen. It's just something I want to try.
Hazel eventually wound up agreeing that she would do this paranormal game with Leanne, but only once they had finished their exams, and as long as they did it on a Friday so that they could sleep in the next day. About a month later, the girls had finished their exams and were ready to do the ritual. And this is a little diagram of what the house looked like. It was a Friday night. They had everything ready that they would need on the kitchen table. So 2 pieces of paper, 2 pencils, 2 pins, 2 candles, 2 lighters, 2 bags of salt, a bowl of fruit, a bowl of chips, a bowl of candy, and a bowl with ice and soda in it. They also had Hazel's phone on the table so that they could make sure that Leanne knocked at exactly the right seconds and landed her last knock exactly at midnight. They were ready to turn this into a fun, spooky night. At 11:55 p.m., Hazel and Leanne wrote each of their full names on their piece of paper, and they each pricked their finger.
How?
Hazel yelped before letting 1 drop of the red stuff drop from her finger and fall onto the paper. Leanne grabbed one of the lighters and then lit her candle and then Hazel's candle before stuffing the lighter into the pocket of her jeans. They each placed their paper in front of the wooden back door, placing their candle on top of each paper. At 11:59, Hazel counted down with Leanne. She knocked on the wooden door 22 times, the last knock landing exactly as the clock struck midnight. The girls each grabbed their lit candle and blew it out before Leanne opened the back door. The moon was full and shining brightly above them, an ethereal glow shining in through the doorway. A breeze rustled the nearby trees, and the papers on the floor shifted before scattering into the kitchen.
How long are we supposed to leave it open?
Hazel asked. Leanne shrugged and closed the door, grabbed the lighter from her pocket, lit her candle again, and then lit Hazel's. The girls started walking around the house together in a loop, each gripping a candle, a bag of salt in each of their hoodie pockets. They spoke about their week, the relief of their exams being over, and a party that they were both rather excited to go to. It had been 30 minutes of nothing happening when their conversation started to dwindle. They were walking in the kitchen when they heard a thump from behind them. They both whirled around.
That sounded like it came from the basement.
It was probably just the house shifting or something. This is boring. Let's just watch a movie and go to bed.
No! Things are finally getting interesting. Let's go check out the basement. Maybe the Midnight Man's down there.
Hazel rolled her eyes.
Fine.
Leanne opened the door to the basement, and the girls started to slowly make their way down the dusty wooden steps. The unfinished basement was creepy to begin with, let alone with no light but the glow from their candles. It was dark and dank at the best of times, and it smelled of must and rot.
This is the perfect atmosphere.
Leanne laughed.
Let's walk around here for a bit.
They started making loops around the basement, their conversation from earlier now renewed. For about 20 minutes they chatted, deep in a discussion about how long it was going to take them to pay off their student debt. That's when they heard a door creak and then shut. They looked at each other, confused. It sounded like it had come from upstairs. They walked to the bottom of the stairs, holding their candles upward to cast more light. The door at the top of the stairs was now shut.
You didn't shut it, did you?
Leanne asked Hazel. Hazel shook her head no.
Keep moving.
Leanne reminded Hazel. In that split second of panic, they both headed in different directions. Leanne headed up the stairs as Hazel started moving around the basement again. Leanne reached the top of the stairs and went to open the door as Hazel made a whiny noise about being left alone in the basement. Leanne placed her hand on the door handle to turn it, but it wouldn't turn. It was like something was holding the other side. She tried again, the knob turning with ease and opening. There was nothing on the other side of the door. Completely freaked out though, she started to make her loop upstairs and yelled down to Hazel.
Get up here. I'm freaked out.
Hazel was in the middle of making her loop around the basement. She rounded a corner and could have sworn that at the other end of the basement, in a dark corner, stood a tall, shadowy figure, but only for a moment. She theorized that it must have been her imagination or a trick of the light. She walked a little faster than before though, hurrying her way up upstairs and cupping her hand around the flame of her candle to keep it from going out. She closed the basement door behind her and turned towards the hallway when, smack, Leanne crashed right into her. Hazel fell to the floor, her candle dropping and then going out. Both girls started to panic. Leanne focused on continuing to move while yelling,
Hurry up, relight it!
Hazel crawled on the floor towards the dripping candle, fingers clasping around it before she started looking for her lighter.
5 seconds left.
Leanne yelled as she made quick loops around the living room. Hazel panicked, checking each pocket. Left, right, back pockets, hoodie pocket.
It's been 10 seconds.
Leanne yelled.
Use your salt.
Hazel ripped the salt from her hoodie pocket, bit off a corner, and spun around on her knees as she encircled herself in salt, her breath coming out in short, panicked bursts. Leanne was making her way back into the kitchen, eyes wide. Hazel looked at her and burst out laughing. Leanne cracked a smile and giggled.
Why are you laughing?
The door probably closed from like pressure in the house or something. Guaranteed we're freaking out for nothing.
Yeah.
She hadn't mentioned to Hazel that something had been holding the doorknob on the other side of that basement door. Was she going crazy?
Well, stay in your circle, just in case.
Leanne started walking the loop again. Her and Hazel could keep a conversation throughout half her loop. She tried to keep the conversation entertaining for Hazel, not wanting her to give up on the game. There was this gnawing feeling in her chest that something bad would happen if they did. But by 1:30 a.m., she was starting to feel tired and bored herself. Had the doorknob really just been her imagination? Yet she continued to walk. Leanne had been walking for another 10 minutes in silence, and this is where the night took a turn. She had just come through the living room and was making her way into the hallway when she heard a creak from her bedroom. The hallway had a noticeable drop in temperature. It was cold, really cold. As she came closer to her bedroom door, the air became even colder, and she noticed her bedroom door was now open, though it had been closed the whole time prior. She moved a little quicker, eyes staring straight ahead. She had this strong feeling that something was in there. She rounded the corner into the kitchen and Hazel looked up at her. Hazel thought to herself.
Does Leanne look scared?
Leanne made her way through the kitchen and headed into the living room. Hazel had to admit, every time Leanne made her way through the other half of the house, her heart would beat a little faster. She would feel fear biting at her. The moonlight shining through the kitchen window did provide a little bit of light, thankfully, but for the most part, Leanne was left in darkness. Hazel's eyes trailed after Leanne, watching her candlelight grow dimmer as she made her way through the living room. And then something caught Hazel's eye. In her peripheral vision, it had looked like something was peering around the wall at the entrance of the living room and staring at her, peering right at her. Her eyes darted to that corner and relief washed over her. Nothing was peering around the wall, but was something there? In between the wall and the couch, in that dark corner. It looked like something was crouched there, but it was hard to tell in such darkness. It couldn't be. She leaned forward a little, eyes trained on the shadow. Just then, Leanne came back into the kitchen and Hazel leaned back. Leanne looked at Hazel suspiciously, but said nothing. As Leanne walked through the kitchen, her candlelight lit up the crevice near the couch. Nothing was there. Hazel breathed a sigh of relief and watched again as Leanne's candlelight grew dimmer. But it happened again. She saw something in her peripheral peering at her around that wall. Her eyes darted there again. There was something in the shadows. She could barely see it, but she could truly feel it. She didn't lean forward this time, just stared. Were their eyes staring back at her? Leanne made her way into the kitchen again.
Wait, can you pass me my lighter from the table? I want to light my candle.
Leanne made her way around the table to grab Hazel's lighter, only it wasn't there.
It's not here.
Hazel felt her heart sink into her chest. This had to be their imaginations. They were tired. The dark was playing tricks on them. So why did she feel like something took that lighter? Why did she feel like her gut was telling her that something was in the house with them? Leanne made another loop around the kitchen table, and as she came towards Hazel, Hazel held out her candle and let the flame of Leanne's wick light hers. This is when things really started to escalate. There was a loud knock that came from the door to the basement. Leanne was staring, frozen in fear. Both girls stared wide-eyed, heartbeats booming in their chests. The room dropped in temperature, suddenly and dramatically.
You have to keep moving.
Hazel reminded Leanne, her voice dripping with fear, her eyes on that corner near the couch where she had seen something crouching. but an overwhelming feeling came over her that something was watching her from somewhere else. Her eyes flipped to the hallway. She held her candle up to that direction. There was a dark, tall, shadowy figure standing right there, looking down at her. Her breath hitched. So many things seemed to go through her mind within seconds. Were they going to die tonight? Were they going to be possessed? Were they going to be haunted forever?
Who are you?
She asked, her voice shaky. She had no clue what had possessed her to ask it. It just came out. Leanne heard Hazel ask this question just as she rounded the corner from the living room into the hallway. She stopped dead in her tracks and for the first time in her life knew what true, absolute fear felt like. A shadowy figure stood near the end of the hallway. It was impossibly tall, with long, thin arms that hung too low. It felt like the blood was draining from her body, like every cell and molecule in her body was dropping. She whipped around to head back towards the living room, but she turned too fast, the flame of her candle extinguishing. She quickly grabbed the lighter from her pocket and brought the lighter to the candle, but her hands were sweaty and shaking. She dropped the lighter and it slid across the hardwood floor and under the living room couch.
No. No.
She ran towards the couch, dropped to the floor, and stuck her hand underneath, feeling for the lighter. She couldn't help but have this fear, like something was gonna grab her hand. The living room was getting colder by the second. She didn't dare look behind her.
Salt.
Hazel yelled from the kitchen. Leanne was hyperventilating, sobs pouring out of her as she stood up straight and ripped the salt out of her hoodie pocket. She tried to rip the bag open, but her hands continued to slip, too sweaty to get a good grip.
Use your teeth.
Leanne ripped the bag open with her teeth, whipping around quickly to make a circle of salt around herself. As she came back towards the couch, as she made her circle, she saw a pitch black shadow crouching near the wall to the kitchen. She screamed, frightened and surprised by the eerie presence. She wrapped her arms around herself, the hyperventilating only getting worse.
Hey,
Hazel yelled. Leanne's eyes darted towards her.
look at me. Focus on me. Take a deep breath. We're going to be okay.
Hazel's voice cracked as she said the last part. Hazel and Leanne kept their eyes focused on each other for a while. Neither knew how long. Everything seemed to be moving so quickly yet so slowly. The creature in the corner stayed crouched, and eventually Hazel sat in her circle of salt. The girls sat, staring at each other for a few moments, and then everything seemed to happen all at once. The knocking on the door started again. One of the chairs on the far side of the kitchen table started to drag backwards. Hazel whipped around, but could see nothing but the chair moving on its own. Leanne could hear someone walking in the living room, though she couldn't see anyone. The shadow figure that had crouched near the couch now had its head tilted as it stared at her, smiling, mouth too big for its face. One of its hands was wrapped around the corner of the couch. Its fingers were long, with even longer, dirty, pointy fingernails. They looked impossibly sharp. One by one, the bowls of snacks started gliding across the kitchen table and falling, food scattering on the floor. One of the bowls slid across the kitchen floor and broke Hazel's circle of salt. She stopped breathing at the realization and watched as the shadowy figure that had stood still in the hallway now started to move towards her. It was coming at her quickly, but somehow everything still felt like it was in slow motion. She snatched the bag of salt from beside her and closed her circle, just as the shadow was at the threshold. The creature drifted back and then melted into the darkness of the hallway. Both girls were sobbing at this point. The TV in the living room turned on, a late-night infomercial playing. The volume continuously increased, the sound all-consuming. There was a boom, like something was crashing into the house or an earthquake. Hazel placed her hands over her ears and wailed. Everything went silent. Hazel let out a breath, opening her eyes. She looked at Leanne, who stared back at her, tears dripping down her face. Hazel looked at the hallway. It looked bare. She looked at the corner near the couch. It looked bare too. Suddenly, the door to the basement cracked open. Hazel stared into the pitch black stairwell, tears welling in her eyes. She sat there for a few moments, waiting in fear.
Your cell phone dropped next to you off the table. What time is it?
2 more minutes.
She held her phone in the tightest grip and watched as each second brought them closer to 3:33.
It's 3:33.
She said, but neither of them moved. They were petrified. How are they supposed to trust that whatever they had invited in wasn't still there? After about 20 minutes of nothing happening, Leanne spoke.
Let's go to a hotel for the night.
And so they creeped out of their circles of salt, hopped in Hazel's car, and headed towards the nearest motel. Leanne paid for the night. Hazel cried herself to sleep as the sun started to rise. Leanne stared blankly ahead, wondering if this was all just a really bad nightmare. But when they awoke, they were in the motel. And when they returned to the house, it was a mess. Food scattered all over the kitchen floor, salt everywhere. However, the kitchen door was now closed. Many sleepless nights followed. Ignore how I look and how I sound right now. It's been a rough day. I'm so sick right now. This is actually a trailer for a TikTok series that I'm doing with some of the most craziest, scariest stories I've ever told about the Three Kings ritual, the Midnight Game, the Staircase ritual, the 11-mile drive, the Closet Game, the list goes on. Episodes will be coming out hopefully every 2 weeks. TikTok series are something that you can buy. I have one already about the Three Kings ritual. I think it's like $2, and it is the scariest stories I've ever told about the Three Kings ritual. They're so good. I'm just saying. I'm in Canada, so I do not make any profits off of my views. The only way that I get to make any profits from doing social media is if I'm selling something. That being said, there's absolutely no pressure to buy the Three Kings ritual series. There's going to be no pressure to buy this new one. It's just something I'm really excited about and would like to share with the people who are interested in it. That being said, I got all of this ready, and currently the TikTok series feature is under maintenance and I can't upload anything right now. So comment below if you are interested in hearing more of these stories once they are no longer updating series and I can actually post. Anyone who comments, I'll let you know when the series is out, and those people should be able to get a discount on the series. That being said, again, no worries if you're not interested in purchasing the series. I'm still going to be posting on my regular TikTok regularly with really creepy stories, folklore, cryptids, the like, and on. Anyways, that's it for this one. See you next time.